Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. And I will speak up. No, can't hear me? All right, I can hear. All right. Seems very quiet all of a sudden. We need to be a dreamer. We need to be that dreamer to move into this God 2.0 that we've been talking about all along. But first, I want to let you know, it's a delight to be here and to spend this time with you again from this vantage point. How's that? Okay, thank you. Make it focused again. I was sitting there. Really what made this more delightful is that I was sitting in the front. In the past 9 years, I have not done that. So this truly was a different experience for me to be able to experience this first part of our service. And I almost feel like I don't need to give this talk because that meditation was beautiful. And, it's just all about where we need to be in our presence with others and forgiveness. So, as Glenda said, we're concluding our series of God 2.0, and we are looking at this idea of where evil has no meaning. So it may seem, or it's kind of like we'd be looking for a Waldo, but we actually would be looking where Waldo is not. I'm glad you got that. And I have to tell you, it's not as elusive as we may think, especially with, given that we just celebrated Memorial Day, and we spent time honoring those that gave their life and service to protecting our safety. I think it's safe to say that our thoughts were deeply with those times where we may have perceived evil as present. We may have thought of Hitler's genocide, or Rwanda, Vietnam, or any of our current wars that are going on in the Middle East. We may also be thinking of issues in our daily life that we may experience racism or sexism, homophobia, maybe transphobia, and it may even get even closer than that. We may have an ex, a relative, a friend, a coworker, a manager that seems to be the meanest person ever, and you're wondering what you did to get on the bad side of this individual. And not being able to come up with an explanation, you might just say, that is the most evil person ever. Well, if we're coming from the consciousness of 1.0, we would see this as a real, intangible threat. And that threat stemming from a belief that a separate entity is acting upon them and creating this awful behavior. Oftentimes, in some traditions, that separate entity would be called the devil or Satan. And it's still very much a very real belief in our society. It's a victim consciousness that's steeped in profound fear that may seem real, but to those of us that look beyond that, it's not real at all. So it's a belief of survival of the fittest, a culture where competition is highly valued. It is a belief in all or nothing, us or them, positive or negative, light or dark, right or wrong, good or bad, and this is our culture. So our discussion really that we need to have is transcending that. Because that is the chaos, that is what doesn't feel good inside of us, especially when we come across those people. And it gets us all upset and all worked up. And we step out of love and compassion. So we need to look at these beliefs bring in more of a wholeness rather than this belief of separateness. So here's the interesting thing, is that being competitive is not naturally who we are. In studying Aboriginal and Indigenous societies, scientists have discovered that the highest value was cooperation, not competition. They have a lower value. And competition beyond certain boundaries is considered mental illness. Isn't that interesting? I think perhaps that may explain a lot. Maybe we need to go to Washington and let them know that. Just as the kid president said, we're all in this together. So our basic human nature is cooperation and democracy, this working together. And additionally, we are wired for a compassionate and empathetic response to others. And we do this through a mirroring neuron that scientists have discovered. When this neuron is fired up, it doesn't distinguish itself from ourselves or others. That's our empathy neuron. That is where we feel what others feel. So in essence, we were born to care for each other. It is deeply in our DNA. And we have seen this happen, especially with natural disasters. When 911 happened, we all came together. When there was a tsunami, everyone came together to help each other out. And help in that recovery. There was this collective consciousness of love for your fellow person. There was no sense of separation. We all gave what we could in those moments. And this is what we need to bring forward. This is the God 2.0 and the space, the place that we need to live from. And we'll get there. I know we'll get there because I know all of you are working towards that. So this idea of evil being defined as competitive and survival of the fitness doesn't exist, as I said, in our basic nature. It wasn't birthed out of the glory and the fabulousness of which the universe was birthed, of which human precious birth, that we were, created from. I don't know if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, Reverend Judy showed a video, the teaser video of specifically human birth being created and life growing within the womb. Now, wasn't that awesome? I mean, how could we really possibly believe that anything bad is going on there? There was chaos there, and even in the birthing process, there's pain, but there was growth with that. So the two things come together for our evolution and for our existence, and just for us to be present. So the bottom line, as Topra states, is that it was created. Evil was created. And we may say that source is a demon. Could be the ego. That's possibly what Eckhart Tolle teaches us in his Power of Now. Or it could be a flawed human nature, that mental illness, which is very real. And when we have that understanding of people, we look at life differently. We look at ourselves differently, and we look at them differently. But to be honest with you, none of that is important. Because it's not going to solve, you can't solve the problem of these bad things at the level of which it was created. Martin Luther King said it very clearly, and he knew this very well. When he explained to his followers, this is what he explained to his followers: the individuals that are persecuting you are damaged humans. You, by following the path of love, have the power to liberate them from their own damaged soul. And you, by following the path of love, let them become fully human. powerful statement. This kind of gives you chills. So this, I believe, brings us to a new definition of evil. This is what Emerson says. It is the absence of good. It is not that something came in. It means that the existence, it means that the absence of qualities that are usually present are not there. So what that means is that we really forgot the truth of our being. We forgot that we are light, we are love, we are intelligence, we are joy, we are harmony, we are peace, we are joy. We just are. That is pure being. And that is what God 2.0 is. It is what Choka says is stage 7 of how to know God. It is a sacred response to all of life. So really, our work is to transcend this duality. These roles of good and bad are just allowed to be what they are. They work together for our own human growth. We only see one God, one people, and we live from a state of grace. I was really thinking about this. We talk about spirituality about borders. And when we're talking about God 2.0, we're talking about not just humans without borders, but our whole world without borders. And I don't know, it just took me into this, there's a big issue of immigration. If we can imagine, as John Lennon, wrote, we wouldn't have those issues. If we saw others as ourselves, there would be no borders. We'd be more welcoming and compassionate and loving and helping and cooperating and helping each other out. I know that it sounds very utopian, but we really need to have this vision if we're going to continue to grow and be really just to exist. So this is a place where we experience the fullness of life, and we realize that we've always been. This is that pure being. It is the I am, which is innocent, naked, and undressed in qualities. It is a sacred response to life that moves us. It's not telling us what to do. It actually is doing the doing for us. Much different viewpoint than, I got a message and I was told to do this. We are just it, and we are moved by it. And I have to tell you that I had a very interesting experience this week. Kind of gives me chills to think about it. But it's very much about this. It was a very profound God moment. So on Thursday, as I do on all Thursdays, I work a 3 to 10 shift. But all day, my mind was filled with my own personal concerns and concerns of this talk. So I go to work, and I work on a couple clients, but with my second client, thank goodness, she didn't feel a need to talk. So in my hands did what needed to be done. So my mind got to do what it needed, what it wanted to do. And I came to this realization that why I was having trouble with this talk was that I forgot to be. So I finished with that client. And then I bring back another client. There's a regular client. I've been treating her for a couple of years. She's an avid bicyclist. So she comes to me to keep her muscles loose and free from injury, so she can continue to do what she loves to do. And she even sent her daughter in once to help her when she was going through some stress of exams. So her daughter's probably in her mid-20s. So I bring her back, and she says to me, "Stacie, I have something to tell you." And I see that she starts to get emotional. It's like, okay. She sat down in a chair. I sat down on the table. And I said, "I'm listening." And she said, I thought she was going to tell me she had a life-threatening illness. But what she said was, "I lost my daughter." And in that moment, this profound quietness came over me. All of the concerns that I had, the thoughts that were in my head, were gone. And I was just there. I let her talk. She was in this deep, raw, naked emotion. It turns out that she died from complications of gallbladder surgery. So it was a sudden thing. She was released from the hospital, after the surgery, but then spiked a fever, went back in, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So you can just imagine the shock that this family was in. And I could tell that she was deeply connected to her daughter. They loved her so much. And I remembered her daughter. She looked so much like her mother. So I let her talk. And then I told her, "You know what? I'm a Reiki practitioner." And I told her what that was about. And I told her, this is not going to be about taking your pain away, because you have this process to go through. This is just about removing some of the heaviness so that you can go through this with a little bit more ease. And she said, "Stacie, I trust you. Whatever you want to do." That in itself is amazing, for someone to place that kind of trust when they're in such deep and profound pain. It was a gift, and it was a responsibility. It's a responsibility that I'd like to say that as a Reiki practitioner, we take on to not do any harm, as a minister, to not do any harm. But really, it's a responsibility as a human being not to do any harm. And all we can do is come forward and do our best. So I gave her a treatment and a massage. And afterwards, she thanked me. And she said, I was going to cancel my appointment. And I was so glad that she didn't. And as she left, she said, "So that's Reiki. I'm going to have to look that up." It was one of those incredible God moments where I didn't need to know what to do, what to say. It just moved through me. There was this energy in the room that was just present. And she got what she needed. And actually the beauty of it was I got what I needed too. So God works on all levels. That was purely expressing itself through me. It was a return of my soul from which I came from. There was no thought, just awakening to me and present moment. So I have to admit that was an extraordinary experience. It may not be one that we're going to have all the time. And you might be asking, but how do I deal with that mean manager? Or that relative that I just don't get along with? That uncle that I'm going to be seeing in Cleveland in July that thinks I'm harming all of you. Well, we do that by remembering who we are. We remember that we are love and that we are joy. We remember that our basic nature is to be compassionate and to be empathetic. We look at our own fear that they may be presenting to us, because really when someone is being that mean and that nasty, they're in fear. They're in God 1.0 that needs God the protector, where evil is a very real threat to them. So we look at how that arises in us by them being who they are, and we see that they are just in fear. And we remember that both of us are all so much more than that. We realign ourselves with that pure being. We go inward. We go into the silence, into the quiet, because that is where God speaks. I remember back on Monday, I was reading this article of this mother who lost her son in Iraq. And she made a couple comments. One that, she likes to believe that there's more good than evil. But good is more quiet than evil is. And it's true. It is so true. But we can do that. You can all do that. And when we get into that quiet, we can allow ourselves, we just open to God being there and allow it to move us. And when it moves us, it may move us into walking away. And that's okay too. We don't have to take anybody's abuse. So that, my friends, is God 2.0. We didn't find it, hopefully I presented a picture that Waldo is not out there, but within. And this God 2.0 is the road less traveled, just like the kid president told us. And I believe it is the one that leads to great awesomeness. And I invite all of you to step into your very own awesomeness. So thank you for being here.